Karen Harris. Have you ever wondered if you thought at all? I know it sounds like a slightly strange question, but I did come to a point in my life when I realized that the only things that I thought about were solutions to family problems. My husband and I, we have a whole lot of kids, so I thought about that. I thought about my job. I'm a homeschool mom, and at the moment I have 5 children that I'm homeschooling, so there's a whole lot of thinking and problem solving and planning as far as being a homeschool mom. I thought about running my house, and I thought about different issues with my friends, but I wasn't actually thinking about anything else. So I had this idea probably 10 years ago that I was going to read classics. Now I have no idea what makes a classic. Like, I have no idea why do you call this book a classic? Why are people still reading it? But I decided to go to the library, go to the classics section, which at that time, the library I went to still had one. Get out a couple of books. Moby Dick was one of them. Hated it. Couldn't get through it. I did eventually read it because one of my sons, who hated all things to do with books, loved that book and told me I had to read it. And for his sake, I did. I also I started to read Anna Karenina. Couldn't get through that book. I have no idea why anybody wanted to read it. I tried Crime and Punishment. Okay, he kills somebody or 2, and I have no idea why anybody wants to read it either. I never finished it. I did read The Count of Monte Cristo. I got to the end. It's a really, really long book. I got to the end. Didn't understand why it was a classic, but I sort of enjoyed it. I then gave up the I'm going to read classic literature phase and spent about 10 years where I didn't read at all. Now that's a little bit odd for me because I have been reading voraciously for my entire life. And then when I hit my 30s, my Wes and I started having more children, and I had 5 kids in 5 years or so. And then I didn't read for about 10 years. But I went to a book club, and the book club challenged me to actually start thinking. And I had kind of given up on using my brain. So I picked up a book that I had heard about. I was about a page and a half through the book. I'm cooking dinner, reading this book, and I got all kinds of aggravated. I slammed the book down in the kitchen, went stomping off to Wes and said, I don't understand how it's possible for a man to write in my native language, English, and I have literally no idea what he's talking about. It's not even hard vocabulary. His concepts are so above my understanding. I have no idea what he's talking about. So now I'm aggravated. I'm going to keep reading it. I hear about this book called How to Read a Book, which is really, really long. And I thought that was weird because I thought like you learn how to read a book when you were 5, 6, 7 years old, and that's the end of it. So in Mortimer Adler's book, he explains the fact that that there's different ways of reading different types of literature in order for you to actually understand it, learn it, understand it. But he also explains that in order for a human to become more educated, they have to read books that are above their current comprehension ability, if that makes any sense. I didn't know that. I know this sounds dumb. I just didn't know that. I kind of thought that the only thing that I would be learning new would be maybe vocabulary, but not necessarily categories of thinking. So after I actually never finished that book, by the way, but after I had read, I don't know, a third, a half, 2/3, something of that book, I realized that it was okay that when I'm reading The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis, I have no idea what he's talking about. It was okay. And that for me to stretch myself by reading books that were, in a sense, above my pay grade was going to result in me becoming more educated. So I decided I'm going to try to start reading books. Now, I happen to be hanging out with a girlfriend of mine, Jill Lewis, and I start telling Jill that I'm going to start reading these hard books. I'm going to read classics. And I start describing to her about Adler's book that I had almost read all. And she said, well, Karen, there's a book called The Well-Educated Mind. And in there, she takes 5 different genres of writing. She explains how to read each one of them and then gives you a list using books from The Great Conversation. And if you've never heard the term The Great Conversation, I believe it was in the 40s, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but Adler and another writer had compiled a list of the greatest books of civilization, Western civilization, and made this long list. People have written many lists since then, but the woman who wrote The Well-Educated Mind made this list. So Jill and I decided to start reading. Now here was the problem. I hadn't read anything really for about 10 years. My attention span is about 30 seconds long, okay? I start trying to read. I have no idea what's going on. I don't understand what I'm reading. And every about 30 seconds, I want to look at my phone. Now, I didn't know I wanted to look at my phone all the time, but I sure as heck do. So I started setting timers for myself to read 15 minutes at a time and not actually do anything else, which is Herculean on my part to try to pull this off. Now, before I go into anything else, this all begs the question, why? What is the reason? Why am I doing this? I'm going to tell you why. My current life has stymied my ability to be fully human. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. Human beings are created to be able to think high thoughts, to be able to think about things like beauty and truth and love and what is friendship and what is responsibility. And I have to tell you that my life had been such a way that yes, I was addressing some of those things, but I had lost my ability to really think deeply about anything. And if a human being is not capable of reading and learning, and the only thing we end up reading are people's Facebook statuses or somebody's tweet or a really fast email or I don't know, what other stuff do we read? Instagram posts, news articles. That's the only thing we're reading. We're going to have a diminished ability to express ourselves as human beings. We're going to become, in a sense, less human. We have to, if you ask someone how they're doing, the only thing they can say is, I'm fine, or how was your day? And it was like, okay. And they don't have even the words to express what they're feeling. There's something stolen from them. And so this isn't just about me and my quest to become more fully human. It was also about my kids. I want my children, if we ever get to the Grand Canyon, to be able to stand on the edge. And yeah, they're going to wrestle some, but be able to have words to express what they felt right then, to understand what all means. I want them to be able to listen to a political debate and have real opinions about what's being said and if it's a logical argument that they're having. I want them to be able to think about philosophy and have an opinion on it, not just an opinion on somebody's outfit during the Oscars. It's not good enough to have your mind just filled with 3-second thoughts. It's not good enough. It's not good enough for us as adults. It's not good enough for your kids either. So, Jill and I start this reading club. And we start at the beginning. I read Don Quixote. And I'm going to tell you, it's about a 900-page book. The moral of the story was, reading books is important. And it affects human beings. 900 pages later, we sat and had this big meeting about it. That's what I ended up with, that reading is important. We also read a Christian living book and we read a philosophy book. I have to say, out of the 3 different groups of reading, the most significant to me have been the philosophy and theology books that I've read. I have had my mind blown. And in some other videos that Wes and I will do, I will discuss some of those. But I have a challenge for you to become more human. Go read a book that's not in this time. So here's the reason why I say that. You ever gone out and you got dressed and you thought, man, I look awesome, right? You look great. You look down and you're like, I'm awesome. I look pretty good. Like, this is about as good as I get. And then someone takes a bunch of pictures and your girlfriend, and you're like, hey, can I see your phone real quick? Let me look at those pictures before you post them on Facebook. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, do I actually look like that? I can't believe I look like that. Because when I'm in myself and I look, well, I don't look so bad. But you catch me from a different angle, I all of a sudden start seeing the flaws a little bit more clearly. In the same way, for you to step out, for me to step out of my time, step out of my culture, and to read from another time, another place. It shows you things. You're going to learn things differently. You're going to have new categories of thought. There's categories of thinking that we have here in America. There's things that make perfect sense here in America. All Americans feel generally the same way about this. This all makes sense. You take some of that stuff outside of America and things look different. So there's something to be said for you reading outside of our time, outside of our culture. This will allow you to have better thinking. It'll allow you to be able to express things differently because you have more images, more stories, more words in your mind. I just read something that hospitals are struggling with the amount of children coming in with mental illness, children. And I know there's a myriad of reasons why that's the case. I can't even begin to touch all that. I'm not a doctor. I don't know so much, but I can tell you, for a child to be able to have the tools to express their own thinking and feelings, they need those. They need to walk in somebody else's shoes. They need to know that these different feelings they have make perfect sense, that somebody from 1700 has felt the exact same way that they do, that there's a child across the entire world that understands how they feel. They need to be able to express who they are. This is a sense of us becoming more human. We are more than this. We're more than this. And reading, I don't care whether it's on a Kindle or on your computer or you're listening to it. There's audiobooks, whether you're listening to it while you drive. This is for our sake. Now, another thought. While you're a really fun book as far as clear thinking, just as an aside, there is a book called The Fallacy Detective. It's for older, like teenage age children, and it teaches you 36 fallacies in arguing, which is really fun. If you have a middle schooler and everybody argues all the time, it would be a great book for you to read and do it with the kids, because then when you're having this completely irrational argument with your child, you can actually use the term, like, oh, hon, that's a red herring. You could use the term. Another book, as far as learning how to think better, is The Thinking Toolbox. It's by the same people. But that book gives you tools for different styles or ways of thinking. Another good book, if you just want to start somewhere, like, okay, I don't really know when the last time was I thought about anything besides work problems or my budget. These are just, they were fun that you could do with your kids. So if you end up reading something new and you have any thoughts, if you learn anything at all, please comment. I would love to hear it. Now, as an aside, a postscript, in a sense, for all my Christian friends who are out there, I do have something else to say. The book I was reading that started this whole process of I Don't Think was called Think. I know, shock, right? By John Piper. And I don't remember anything too much about the book, except the verse he used that he had based the book on was Matthew 22:37. Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And he asked the question, are you using your mind? Are you using your mind? Are you growing your mind's ability to think and to glorify your God? And my answer at the time was no, I'm not. So I'm going to challenge you, Christian, to say, your God created you to be a thinking being, created in his image. And that God has made you in such a way that you can grow in your thinking. No matter where you are right now, you can grow. And the more that you know about this world, the more you know about philosophy, theology, biology, you go down the list, the more that you know, the more you are going to see the glory of God, and you will better reflect your God as a result. It's worthwhile. If you need some more, some more proof, go read Think by John Piper. The Abolition of Man is also a good book with which to start. Hard book, but you get past the first couple of pages and eventually it'll start making better sense. Don't give up on yourself. You're more than Facebook statuses and tweets and 30-second long news articles to be read. We have minds that were created to do all kinds of amazing things. So even if it just means that I'm going to read for 15 minutes a day, something outside of my normal comfort zone, something that'll stretch my mind beyond what it is right now, there's no possible way you'll have regrets. Read a book with your kids. Have your kids read something different, something old, something from somewhere else, for your sake and for their sake and for your humanity's sake. Thanks.